the fact that these JTF groups were already bogged down running ongoing operations. For example, Bauchi, which is where this whole thing started with the Jadama Mada strike of July 26, 2009. Bauchi has seen so many attacks and activities. Kano has been a big, hotspot. If you remember Kano attacks of January 20th, 2012 and all that, so Kano has been a very big area of activity. So we can go around and paint that picture around. Katsina, Kaduna, so on and on. So what I'm saying is that splash that was coming, it was anticipated that when it came down, the units on ground here, the JTF units on ground here, will put their buckets and catch them. But now what wasn't anticipated is for them to come as far south as Lagos, Ogun, Oyo, Ondo. Of course, Edo State, they are already there because they are running the Ansaru group that's operating in Kogi. They are running into northern Edo, to escape law enforcement and JTF. They have strong JTF activity in Kogi State, so they come into northern Edo. So, but what that tells you is that Edo ought to have a good JTF operation in place. But that's what we keep saying, proactivity. Security is not something you wait when people die, then you start responding. I think you and I have discussed this on said previously. It's not something you wait when people have died in large numbers, you start responding. It's too late, then they've won.
Okay. When you look at the current situation we have, the Boko Haram was said to have declared a period of ceasefire. But some of them have come out to say, no, there's no ceasefire. And then you look at the arrests that is going on, and it looks like the battle continues. What do you think will happen, because we are approaching the tail end of the fasting season anyway?
You see, I have never believed there was any ceasefire anyway. To some of us, we felt there are some group of people who are just there and wanting to blackmail the leadership of this country to do one or two things at all costs. The reality is straight, that if these people are talking of ceasefire and the president has put together a committee to look into this same issue, and you see, you just discover that this other man was said to have been captured yesterday or something, and somebody came out and said, look, if the guy has been captured and you said he's been killed, where is his body?
Disinformation.
You understand what I'm saying? So it is just an attempt to disinform and then distract whatever plans, whatever strategy that is on ground, because they know that the net is getting closer. See,
so you think that disinformation is coming from Boko Haram or from fifth columnists within government, or where?
See, my brother, it is a known fact. It has been asserted by the president himself, by a lot of leadership in this country, and that we have seen that quietly there are some fifth columnists within that is latching onto this unfortunate thing to gain one political cloud advantage or the other. So definitely there is no running away from that fact. You see, and that is why we must look at it from the point of mobilizing the ordinary people on ground. Because in a neighborhood, if there is a network that is able to take into consideration the feelings of the neighborhood, you know who lives in your neighborhood, no matter how fenced. You know who is coming in. You get what I'm saying now? So for these people not to have succeeded at all is for us to be able to mobilize. It is not necessarily the job of the JTF alone. Yeah. Like you said in Edo, yes, they will have galvanized the JTF to be much more proactive and send the response. But I think the people too.
Okay. Ona Ekhomu, you were saying that, yes, you strongly believe that it is a distraction, all of that happening, where they're saying that there is a ceasefire and then no ceasefire, and Shekarau has been captured and not captured. He was shot, he must be dead, and he's not dead. How do we manage information in this area?
This morning and said that there's no evidence that Shekarau has been shot or anything like that. So, I mean, the point is, you have people like Mr. Razaka said, you have people who gain from, just dragging out this ordeal and making it appear as if they are on top of it or they are doing something. Because when they say that, they can now go and maybe negotiate for some advantage, usually pecuniary advantage, as it were. But I think the key here is there's a success here that we must point to, and I issued that in a release during the week after the Kano bomb. Now let me tell you what happened at the Kano bomb. The hawkers, the fruit hawkers, were carrying their wares around. A fruit worker, particularly, was carrying his wares. The one on Onigu Road that killed many people, carrying the wares around, and people were seated drinking. Were like, "Oh yeah, bring that this thing, come." He didn't want to sell to anybody. He was just moving around. A young fruit hawker. He was moving around. He didn't want to sell. That's what we call TAPIs. TAPI is Terrorist Attack Pre-Incident Indicator. There was a TAPI there that wasn't recognized because we've seen them do this so many times. In fact, they've hit JTF patrols or checkpoints with this same fruit seller thing so many times before, such that JTF now knows when the fruit seller is approaching a checkpoint and won't stop, they'll open fire and they'll detonate ordnance. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. Yeah. So that was a TAPI. It's a Terrorist Attack Pre-Incident Indicator. But we didn't know. So what I said during the week was, I said states should develop an SIDPI, SIDPI, State Improvised Explosive Device Prevention Initiative. And why is that so important? Because the states are sitting there, but the governors sit and they go and pay condolence visit after people have been killed. And I'm like, what is this? This doesn't make any sense. States have an obligation. So back to Mr. Razak, it's not only JTF that should be defending people. Look at what's happening in Borno State with the Borno Youth Vigilance Group, BYVG, popularly known as civilian JTF. They are able to flush out a lot of these Bokite elements. So that means that citizen involvement is so critical in defending the community. So we can create a community defense shield, which is funded by the states. That popular security vote they get can help to educate people. All they need to do is come on TV, come to your program, and tell people terrorist attack indicators, so that people will now join in the vanguard in looking out for what is wrong. But when we have a situation where governors are only interested in giving out visiting this year and saying we'll pay hospital bills, I mean, that is ludicrous.
Okay, do you think that the Minister of Special Duties and Chairman of Presidential Committee on Dialogue and Peaceful Resolution, do you think they're making any progress, considering their utterances saying that we are on course, the Kano bombing will not deter us from having more conversation and more conversation? Do you think that's actually going to get us anywhere?
Well, I think political actors will act in ways to perhaps show that they are relevant and they are doing things. But I think really that committee is having a lot of challenges, and it really should be disbanded at this point in time. Even after the Kano bomb, you know, I mean, that's something that, and unfortunately, his mandate was renewed for 2 months. I think they've missed the whole picture. Right now,
should they be replaced? Because then, if they're gone, what other measures should we take to, if we have to, dialogue with Boko Haram?
Yes, we will get to dialogue, Ms. Josh. The problem first is we need to stop the violence. Yeah. We need to control the violence. You can't say you are dialoguing and you are controlling. We need to control the violence at least to a manageable level where we know that the will to fight is down.
That's what the committee is supposed to do. Right?
Well, the violence is, excuse me, it's escalating. It's only the state of emergency that's containing BH operations. If not for the state of emergency, I'm saying in that emergency zone which we call that hot zone, that is the area of greatest contamination. Mm-hmm. If not for the emergency rule in the hot zone, we will have more problems. Now, the warm zone, you can see there's a lot of activity. Mm-hmm. We are in the cold zone here, and we are already picking up fights.
Are you saying that the state of emergency should replace what the committee is supposed to be doing? Are you saying it's more effective at this time?
The state of emergency has been in place for only 2 months and a half right now. I think it should have been allowed to play out for 6 months before we start looking at amnesty, because the will to fight, look, is called conflict mapping, conflict resolution. First, you must get the will to fight to calm down, and then people now say, okay, let's deal with issues, let's resolve issues. That's where you negotiate. You don't put negotiation up front before when fighting and shooting is going on. And that's why, because what that does is it kind of distorts the security map on the ground. The fighters, that's the government forces, are not really sure, what they are supposed to be doing. Are we supposed to be fighting actively, or are we supposed to be? I'm not. They are not sure. There are too many mixed signals. So that's really the problem. But what I'm saying is, since we have an escalation, at least as proven, I can give you many recently. You remember 25 killed in Dawashe village, fishermen, BYVG personnel, children, women killed in Dawashe village, Darazo attacks, Gombe police personnel killed. So I can list a lot of them. So I'm just saying, so of course we have hot zone, and then we have several cold zone attacks. Not cold zone, warm zone attacks.
Warm zone attacks.
So thank God, no cold zone attacks yet.
Yes. Let's ask Mr. Ladosu then. Do you agree with Ona Ekhomu that the presidential team, the committee that was put together to dialogue and look at possibility of amnesty should actually be disbanded?
Really, I expect them to have even resigned. Yes, not disbanded, with every sense of responsibility, please. Because you see, if we say we believe in some people's capacity to take us forward, Nigerians must start this, and you discover that you are not making any headway.
But the president gave them 2 more months too.
It is not about 2 more months, my sister. If not for the JTF activities and state of emergency in those states, it has gone a long way to prove to us that they have nothing to offer. They won't achieve anything for 1 year. And if you ask me, I will follow what he has just said. You see, heat up the place, smoke each and every one of them out, yes, with every sense of responsibility. Because if you deny a man the right to live, I don't think you deserve to live. So the most important thing is this: the president should disband the committee, but to increase the briefing of the various JTF and even extend the reach of the state of emergency, so that will put paid to some of those activities. Then coming down here, because like he said, some of our state governments must wake up. Very, very important. It is not about sentiment, it is not about religion, it is not even about tribe. They must wake up to the fact that the security of lives and properties is in their hand. And they must do all that is necessary to make sure that people could sleep with their eyes closed. It's very important.
Okay, I will come back to you. We have to begin to wrap up because I've got something I've got to ask. But let me ask this question. When we're approaching a situation where we thought we're approaching the tail end, after what happened in Borno and some other parts of the north, there was a thought that, yes, the JTF has gone in and they have decimated the numbers and destroyed most of their strongholds, and a lot of them have run away. We thought it was coming to an end, and suddenly this onslaught that has happened recently. At what point should we begin to look at human rights issues in terms of the killings, especially instead of capturing those that are thought to be Boko Haram members? At what point should we begin to look at the human rights issues?
I think
that will be your final word, because we've got to wrap up now.
Thank you. I think the human rights issues are very important. I have said 2-3 years ago in a lecture to the MBA that I think we need to look at order versus freedom. Which one do we want? Do we want order or do we want freedom? I think let us not lean too hard on the freedom, on the rights issues. Let's look first for order. Order is the first order in heaven, is the first business in heaven. We must first establish order. That means enforcement. Now, there is no evidence whatsoever that there are human rights issues, because you saw the 42 fighters who were caught here in Lagos. They were paraded and they are being processed by the criminal justice system. I think what we need to look at, Mr. Kayode, is at the end of the day, what is the end game for these arrested terrorists? What's the end game in terms of the criminal justice system? That's the judicial system. What is the end game? Because the only conviction we've seen, good conviction, is those guys who attacked Niger State and Federal Capital Territories, who were given what is it, life in jail because of the EFCC Act. The ATA, the Anti-Terrorism Act, is a washout, and that is what we need to be. That act, in fact, violates the human rights of all Nigerians because it's in place, and that's the current law. So we thank God for the smart prosecutor who used the EFCC Act to prosecute those guys. Okay. So I think there's a violation here, but it's from the legislative authorities.
Okay, because you said something about the human rights are not really being violated. You know, recently the international community condemned the JTF for being too brutal.
No, those are sensationalized. Baga, for example, never happened. No abuses happened. 36 dead, 30 Boko Haram, Bokais, 5 personnel. But when HRW came up with his satellite imagery, which was 80% exaggerated, in a space of 3 football fields, you can't have 2,227 housing. And HRW was smart enough to also put a small disclaimer there that, oh, by the way, we don't have ground verification. Any satellite imagery is subject to ground verification.
So JTF is doing it right.
Of course, JTF is doing it by the rules, playing by the rules.
All right, final word then. Human rights issues as against the need to fight Boko Haram with everything that we've got.
Like he said, you see, order first before you talk of right. That is the truth. You see, if you have been, or anybody close to you have been a victim of the Boko Haram, you will have the feelings and you will know what it means to be hit by those people. You see, my brother, the reality on ground is that these people are being taken and they are being made to face the judicial process. If that is done, sir, there is no violation of right. What we want to agree is extrajudicial killing.
Indeed.
But they were arrested, they were paraded. They were arrested in the southwest there, and they were paraded, everybody saw them. And we've not heard if anybody, none was in the handcuff, none was in leg cuff. You understand what I'm saying? So the level of human rights abuse, our people are there to monitoring things, but that you have the right to live does not mean you have the right to take others.
All right, thank you very much. So on that note, we'll have to wrap up this segment again and say thank you to Ona Ekhomu, our security expert who's contributed to the conversation, and also Razak Oladosu, who's human rights activist. Thank you very much for coming on the show. So Sunrise is not going away. We still have a few more things to discuss.
Yes, we're going to recoup and come back stronger. So don't go anywhere.